recording anyway. So my name's Kevin Halpenny. I'm European Chair of World Urban Parks and President of the Irish Landscape Institute. And you're very welcome to our session today on Geo Design and how that can be applied to community engagement in the context of dealing with coastal change management. And we have a number of people involved in a particular project here called Coastal Communities Adapting Together. Dr. Karen Foley is present, Pauline Parboat from University College Dublin, and Chiara Coco and Saul Crowley, who are working on the project as am I. So just as by way of introduction, I suppose community engagement allows local people to become directly involved in the planning, design and management of local resources such as parks, green spaces and other infrastructure. And the process of community engagement results in informed and engaged residents that feel better connected to their communities. While sometimes contentious, but often more productive and rewarding, community engagement is an essential ingredient of successful decision making. And how we ensure that the process of community engagement is fair and does not favour vested interests, and where the issues involved are contended, how we ensure that these issues are fairly and constructively resolved is really important. The presentation on geodesign will outline some smart and innovative techniques that I believe contribute to the process of constructive engagement, allowing solutions to evolve by considering multiple criteria in a collaborative and intelligent way. The CCAT project, which stands for Coastal Communities Adapting Together, aims to support coastal communities in understanding climate change and how to adapt to this problem. The CCAT project you're about to hear about is led by University College Dublin in partnership with Fingal County Council and University College Cork in Ireland and Cardiff University, Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum and the Port of Milford Haven in Wales. And CCAT will explore how digital tools can engage people with change, for example, using interpretive games and online learning resources to help children, young people, and others understand how climate change is affecting their local area. So I'm going to pass over to Saul Crowley now to introduce you to the CCAT project.
Thanks very much, Kevin. So let me just start here. Yeah, my name is Saul Crowley, and I'm joined by my colleague Chiara Coco. Like Kevin said, we're working on the CCAT project. And what we're going to talk about today is geodesign and how we're currently using it in our project. As Kevin said, we are based between Fingal County Council and UCD, Southern Ireland. But the project itself has a number of partners, and our focus is essentially on the kind of Irish Sea community. So we're looking at the east coast of Ireland, and we're also looking at the west coast of the UK, specifically Wales. Kevin already mentioned the partners there, but we're paired with University College Cork, we're paired with Cardiff University, Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum, Port of Milford Haven. We're looking at just new tools to help coastal communities adapt and kind of engage with change in the surrounding area. And geodesign is one of those tools that we're looking at right now. And it's probably one of the most innovative methods that we're using right now to engage with these communities and help them actually have a say in what's happening around them. We're essentially a pilot project. We're only running until the end of next year. We're part funded by the European Regional Development Fund and the Ireland Wales Programme. And like I said, our main aim is just supporting these communities. So I just wanted to quickly give an introduction to where we're working and kind of contextualize the work itself so that you'll have a frame of reference then when we're talking about the geodesign. The study area that we have now is a place called Fingal in Ireland. It's just on the east coast there. It's just north of Dublin City, the capital. And like it says here, it's the northernmost part of the Dublin region. It's part of Dublin County. It's its own administrative body, which technically is also a county. It's a bit complicated, but it's its own unit pretty much. So it's different from Dublin City itself, and it's made up of those areas that you can see on the right. So it's a number of small areas based around major towns. And it's quite unique in relation to the region, especially Dublin City. Because Fingal is quite diverse in its landscape. It's a mixture of rural, urban, suburban communities. You can have very large towns that are basically just an extension of the city itself. You can have smaller kind of urban communities that are further outside of that, that are in the commuter belt. And then you can have a very large area that's essentially rural, because it's all it's all agriculture and it's all production-based economy. And on top of that, Fingal itself is quite a diverse and new community. It's predominantly families and young people. It's characterized by a high proportion of young people and families in relation to the rest of the country particularly. And as you can see here, the two major groups that you can see are children 0 to 14 and people who are 25 to 44. So it's essentially kind of children and parents. And those are significantly higher than the national average when you look at it broken down too. And it's just another example of that. This is the family cycle broken down a bit more. And you can see here too, it follows that same kind of trend. It predominantly skews towards preschool age kind of families up until pre-adolescent, and then it falls more in line maybe with the national average. On top of that, Fingal itself is quite a dynamic place. It's the fastest growing county in Ireland. Over the course of 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, it grew by over 23%, which is quite drastic. And in the last number of years, in the last census we had in 2016, it was the youngest administrative county in the country with the average age of 34, and it also held the youngest town by age, which is Balbriggan. But also, it strangely had among the oldest towns as well, a place called Malahide, where 38 was the average age. So it's relatively mixed, but it still skews towards higher than average for the state. And in that course of 5 years between 2011 and 2016, between two censuses, you can see that it was particularly high in comparison to the national average for growth. So what's happening is that it's essentially a place full of new residents with new communities, and they all fall predominantly into one of two areas, which is young people and families. And those people are bringing in a particular set of kind of ideas and requirements and necessities, and they're shaping the way the council is moving forward with their planning. And as you can see here, this is just broken down again as well by female and male. And it just further emphasizes that point. It's predominantly kind of children and then people who are probably of the parenting age. When the council are looking at adapting to these new communities and meeting their needs, with CCAT, we're particularly interested in these three areas. And these are the three major areas that the council are interested in too. Sustainable development, so that's everything from environmental sustainability to community sustainability. So things like pollution, biodiversity, human health, public transport. In addition to that, it's social inclusion. And one of the major goals of the council is bringing in more of the new residents and more of the pre-existing residents into the process of contributing to their communities, making people feel like they're welcome in the county, making people feel like they have a say in the major decisions that are going on right now. And the council has identified a number of kind of key demographics within that. Among them are children, young people, single parent families, unemployed people. It kind of goes on. People who are typically excluded from that process or feel like they're excluded from it, so that they're less likely to contribute. And thirdly, and most relevant for the projects that for us, it's climate change. The council is very focused on adaptation and mitigation when they're looking at development going forward. There are major risks occurring now with flood risk, along with waste management and green infrastructure. And for us, with CCAT, climate change is in our name pretty much. So when we look at Fingal, we're thinking about the coast of it. Fingal, is, like we said, is a coastal county. It's along the eastern seaboard. It has 88 kilometers of coast out of its 450 square kilometers. And interesting for Ireland, by 2050, it's projected that the impact of coastal erosion will potentially affect up to 2 million people within 5 kilometers of the coast. And as it stands, that's a significant amount of the population. And for Fingal right now, already a population is dealing with the effects of climate change and coastal erosion as we're speaking. And this is one of the major study areas that we're looking at on the CCAT project right now. It's a place called Portrain. It's right along the eastern coast of Fingal. It's, as they say, it's Fingal's only small town, meaning that it's less than 5,000 residents. It's predominantly, it was predominantly holiday homes, but over time it's grown into its own kind of settlements with semi-permanent residences and permanent residences. And it's kind of prized because there's a very nice beach and it has a dramatic coastal view. And part and parcel of that, it's the location of a number of EU Habitats Directive areas. So it has quite a large special protection area and has another very large special area conservation. And they're all focused around the coastal area and the interior kind of river area. And it's all aimed at protecting vulnerable migratory birds and the habitat system that's running along. Because Portrain has a very extensive dune network. As it stands right now, that GeoNetwork is under extreme pressure. Over the last few years, the council has had to react to managing the situation because there's been a number of extreme weather events that have led to fairly severe erosion of the dunes that have started to encroach on the pre-existing residence that is there along the coast. There's a figure here that's slightly out of date right now, but up until 2018, it was as far as 20 meters in some parts where the coastline receded to the point of threatening number of homes. That's since increased in certain areas too. And it's put the community in a fairly vulnerable position where they're effectively at the wits of nature. Whenever there's a severe kind of weather event, or if there's any protracted kind of storm or heavy kind of tidal action, it leads to the threat of more erosion of the dune network, and the people there are essentially feeling insecure. So what we're looking at with the CCAP project is a way to kind of get involved with that community who are trending towards the demographics of Fingal anyway. So it's kind of new residents who are generally kind of younger, or people who are generally a bit older and settled. And we want to find a way to kind of involve them in this process of making decisions for the local area. Because in recent time, community on Portrain has been quite vocal about what they want to happen to their area. Recently, the council has reacted quite proactively to that. They've installed a fairly significant amount of sea defences. These are called CBs, as you can see here. And these are along a certain stretch of the beach, and they're protecting the most vulnerable stretches of it from further erosion. This is relatively recent. This is only in the last year or so it's actually been installed. But the main aim of it is to prevent further erosion, as can be seen here. When we're looking at this, we're trying to bring the community in so they feel like they have a greater say in what's happening to the area. But we also want to look past that and look at those three broad areas that we're talking about too, about sustainable development and about social inclusion. So when we're talking about geodesign, it's from this kind of context of people who are potentially feeling like they aren't being listened to, or they feel like their needs are very relevant for right now and it's very timely, and they feel like they need a reaction very quickly. And we think that geodesign is probably the best thing that these people have at their disposal right now. So with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Chiara Coco, who's going to talk about geodesign in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, so.
Thank you, so. I'll just share my screen. Okay. I think it's working, right? Okay, so okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay, so my name is Chiara Coco. I'm a research scientist at the University College Dublin, working on the CCAT project. And specifically, I'm researching on methods of stakeholders and community engagement, in mainly focusing on the targeting on the CCAT communities of Portrain in Fingal and Pembroke Dock and Milford Haven in Wales. So the type of participatory and collaborative tools and methods that we are using are quite novel, such as geodesign. And in this presentation, I will briefly introduce you to the main concept of this methodological approach to spatial planning, and some of its recent applications internationally and in Ireland. One more thing, I've decided to prepare this presentation using ArcGIS story maps, which is a powerful tool developed by Esri for digital storytelling that we are testing within the CCAT project. So the main idea underlying the concept of geodesign, namely that the characteristics of the geographic space condition what and how we design, has been used since the beginning of time. So in this, for example, Ian McCarg invoked the idea of geodesign when he was talking about design with nature and a geo-based technique to assess the best of worst location for a specific land use. For example, in this image, we have a set of 6 criteria here on the left, for example, slope, surface drainage, and soil drainage represented in maps. And here on the right, we have their combination using map overlay techniques that were used, for example, here in the 60s to assess the best location for a new highway route in New York. So geodesign in the last 2 decades has emerged mainly referring to environmental and participatory planning design, often supported by digital technologies to address complex planning issues from an interdisciplinary point of view. The methodological approach of geodesign, if properly implemented, leads to an inclusive and transparent decision-making process. So geodesign is gaining international recognition and attention, and searching the term on Google Trends, it shows its popularity in the last 12 months. And here we can see that it confirms also the main research groups on the area. In fact, the research has been carried out on both sides of the Atlantic, with the Geodesign Summit World held every year in the United States, and the Geodesign Summit Europe held in the Netherlands. Following on the list, we have Italy, where research is being carried out at the University of Cagliari, and similarly in Brazil at the Federal University of Minas Gerais. Here, the first place in the list is Ukraine, where early this year a startup has been developed with this, has been founded with the same name, and it seems they have invested a lot in marketing. So in 2018, consortium of more than 140 academic institutions was created mainly for sharing experiences within the field of geodesign and best practices. And the first aim of the International Geodesign Collaboration, this is the name of the consortium, was to use these novel planning and design methods of geodesign to better address the global sustainability goals of United Nations Development Plan. The International Geodesign Collaboration meetings are held every year in California. So the University of Dublin is one of the member of this consortium, and they have developed a geodesign workshop focusing on the future of Ballymount, which is one of the most important industrial area in Ireland, and is located in the South County Dublin. And the project was part of a semester-long course at the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. So geodesign has been applied in many critical contexts, for example, in a post-earthquake situation, to develop in an academic environment rehabilitation and recovery strategy. Or, for example, it has been used in Brazil in the Iron Quadrangle, which is an area characterized by serious conflicts between mining and landscape, environmental and historic protection. So in all the studies I've presented to you, the geodesign workflow have been applied following the framework as presented by Carl Steinitz in 2012. The framework is an interrelated set of 6 models that allows for quickly making effective decisions about complex and competing issues. In particular, the first 3 models of the framework focus on the knowledge building phase. The current situation in the study area is analyzed, and the data and maps are produced. Whereas in the last 3 models, desirable design alternatives are defined and assessed to identify potential impacts on the territory, and eventually reach an informed and negotiated design towards a negotiation. So the use of a structured workflow, decision-making workflow, such as the Geo Design one, allows to effectively organize the key aspects of the process, in particular the contribution of stakeholders and local community in the different phases of the process, and the use of appropriate technology to support the implementation of specific steps. So the last three models of the Geodesign framework usually take place in a two-day intensive and collaborative planning workshop in a multimedia lab with PCs and a large display screen. However, in the past months, many Geodesign workshops have moved online due to the current COVID-19 situation. And in current circumstances, there is even more a need for local community to be involved in planning processes using online digital tools. Many typical forms of consultation, for example, face-to-face meetings or local exhibition, are now either impossible or very difficult. So in the first half of this year, various online Geodesign workshops were organized in small coastal communities in Ireland. And here in the map, I have highlighted with the light color those workshops that were carried out online, while with the darker color, the workshops that in the past years were developed in person here in Ireland. So for example, two workshops, one with state agencies and one with the local community, were held as part of the preparation process for the sustainability plan for the Waterville Valley in the Kerry County. And stakeholders and residents had the possibility to draw design for the local plan. Both workshops were organized with 3 sessions, an introduction section of 1 hour, and in 1 week later, two Geodesign sessions of 2 hours each. This is the schedule that have been used in the majority of the online workshop developed in the past months. So the output of both workshops are currently being used by the consultants to develop the action of the plan. Another interesting online consultation meeting was held in Milltown, always in the Kerry County. In the Kerry County, where the local community has been involved in a geodesign study with a goal of collaboratively shaping the town's development over the next 6 years. A draft plan with 32 proposals have been drawn up. So in June, of this year, a group of 13 students from the University College Dublin and the CCAT team were involved in a geodesign study with the aim to design interventions and management action for the resilient sustainable development of Portrane affected by coastal erosion, as so well explained a few minutes before my intervention. And always as part of the CCAT activities, a 3-hour tutorial was developed with the technical staff of the Fingal County Council early in November. And this workshop with the county was mainly focused on the geodesign process rather than on the results and on the supporting technology used. In fact, in all these geodesign workshop that I have shown to you, the web-based software Geodesign Hub has been used to achieve a consensus for the future development of the study area. So Geodesign Hub has been designed to implement the Geodesign framework digitally, and it enables dynamic, interactive, and collaborative design. So the participants divided in stakeholder groups are able to draw, as here in this video, proposals. They can discuss and negotiate towards a final agreed and integrated design. So there are certainly some important differences between face-to-face and online workshops, but GeoDesign provide a way to effectively engage the community, including during virtual meetings. There can be less space for critical reflections with online engagement, by using digital tools such as GeoDesign. There's the possibility to clearly focus on discussions on solving potential conflicts of interest between stakeholders, which is no small achievement. And following these recent and positive online experiences with GeoDesign for Irish coastal management, CCAT are currently exploring the possibility to develop a full-fledged GeoDesign study with the project partner Filga County Council and local stakeholders in coastal communities in Fingo. GeoDesign can in fact be effectively used for to coastal area affected by erosion and flooding, and where often difficult decisions need to be made. So in conclusion, we firmly believe that GeoDesign methods matched with digital technology is a powerful tool that should be part of any local authority's toolbox. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara, and thank you, Saul, also. I just want to ask if there are any participants who'd like to ask a question of the team. You can submit a question through the online portal as well after the event, and we can circulate that to the participants and respond later. But just from one thing that I have found really useful in looking at geodesign is that you have that different stakeholders, and you can see straight away where there are overlapping priorities and establish what is not contended or what is our shared objectives from different stakeholders, which might not have become evident in a normal consultation process, and that can sort of build consensus or start to build consensus very quickly. I think that's a huge advantage of this process from what I've seen of it in terms of the working arrangement. Would that be your view as well, Saul or Chiara or Karen or Pauline? Do you have any comments on that? What you see as the key kind of most significant benefits in terms of this kind of consultative process?
I think it's a very democratic process, because I think everybody appears to have everybody, particularly now that we started doing it online, when people are engaging, one person's line on a drawing is sort of equal to somebody else at the initial stages. And the other thing that I think has been interesting, just having been involved in a lot of online webinars and seminars since last March, that in many cases it is easier for people sometimes to ask questions, because it's just a matter of typing in, it's like a text message. It's always standing up in that public hall or making your voice heard there. So I think there are definitely advantages of some of the online engagement. But the big elephant in the room, of course, is people who are not sort of digitally savvy and not confident to do it. I expected it to be much more negative than it was. So it's not really directly answering your question, but I'm just sort of saying that the process of texting questions. I've noticed that quite a few things recently, an awful lot more questions have come forward, and even if they can't be answered at the time, they're answered later. I wonder specifically with the Geo Design, maybe Saul, you might have some thoughts about that, about sort of the process. But I think with good moderatorship, everybody's voice does get heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And participants kind of join us, maybe not necessarily knowing what to expect, but by the end of the impression I got was people seem to be quite surprised by the end, where they feel like they really were involved through every step of it. And by the end, they feel like if they didn't have any expertise in the topics that are being discussed, by the end, they definitely feel like their opinions were still heard. And that seems to be the main strength to me anyway.
From another aspect of it that jumps out at me is the sort of scalability of it, or the type of flexibility of it. I suppose increasingly, with sort of social media and transparency within the council, we have to be, there's more accountability, is what I'm trying to say, I suppose, and it offers that prospect, I suppose, to us in terms of being able to demonstrate that we have, I suppose, gone out to consult with local communities in a fair and equitable way. And I suppose that's very significant from our perspective, because while the planning process is designed to do that up to a point, you're going to consult with people with a ready-made or a fixed or fairly fixed solution, rather than starting the process from a blank canvas and asking people what their ideas and wishes are. So that can be very helpful to us. I'm just interested in, is there a view on the ideal scale that this operates at, or is it just the way you set it up for different scale projects or concepts or plans?
Yes, I would also like to add that the fact that Geo Design and these digital tools are particularly useful also for like collaborative working within local agencies, so state agencies. So not only for involving community, but also for effectively bringing the gap between different agencies that normally they are not used to work in a collaborative way, and they more focus on sectorial plans that we all know more and more that doesn't work effectively if there is not enough coordination between all the agencies. And you know it's very well, Kevin. I mean,
yeah, and I think on that too, we do that sort of multi-stakeholder. Even within a local authority, there are lots of stakeholders, and where I'm thinking of green infrastructure, which is multifunctional, and where you're asking certain types of infrastructure to do multiple things. It seems to offer a huge advantage, because you can look at the same infrastructure for different purposes or fulfilling different roles, and sort of try and resolve different questions using the same solution. So I think it has that, it does seem to favor that sort of approach in terms of green designing for that multifunctional green infrastructure approach. I think that's a valuable aspect of it. So I suppose we're,
I think we have a question from Dennis.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, I was just thanks very much for giving the presentations. I'd like to thank all the presenters. I thought it was very good and very well presented. And I just had a quick question: is how would Geo Design fit in with a bias of people who maybe wouldn't have access to IT or the IT skills, or an age bias against other people? What techniques you might see to be able to level the playing field in that regard?
Yeah, I thought you had a very good example from Italy. Did you not talk about that once, when you had the different generations coming together?
Yes, I've talked about this workshop in Norcha, where we had people from the community that they were not at all used to work with computers, and they were more familiar with sketching by hand. So they normally they sit close to young people, and they were somehow guiding them in drawing their proposals. So this was an excellent example of collaboration among different generation of participants. And I've also another example. For example, Geo Design was used in Brazil also for as part of the process of let's say legalizing illegal settlement or formalizing illegal settlements, and so working with tough communities and where they are not used to be engaged, and it was quite difficult to involve them, especially the parents. And so we start working with the children, and they were there. We work in a multimedia lab at the school, and then the children were able to talk about design and the possibility of planning their community with the parents. And the next session of the workshop, the parents show up, and actually the young children were the young people were designing for them and explain to them the technology. So it was again another excellent collaboration of intergenerational participation. So
yeah, just speaking personally on it, it is a very user-friendly technology, even though it is, it is particularly easy to learn. I mean, when we did the tutorials with our colleagues in Fingal, I could see that within a very short period of time, everyone was very comfortable using the setup, for even people who aren't usually used to mapping and stuff like that. It doesn't rely on you having that understanding or sensibility in terms of the technological abilities. So I do think it's very user friendly from that point of view. And just I suppose where I saw it really having a very direct benefit for the council was in things like local area plans, where in terms of you have often fairly small communities involved with, and with that very good local knowledge, that they can very quickly see opportunities and possibilities and maybe constraints that even people working in the council who are very aware of Fingal wouldn't have the awareness of that, but local people could sort of navigate it very quickly in the context of something like a local area plan. Okay, so that was really a whistle stop tour of what the capabilities, this was a Geo Design, and how they're being applied in Fingal and in Ireland. And just to thank the team from CCAT on your behalf, thank Chiara and Saul for doing the presentation, and thank Karen and Pauline for attending as well, and looking forward to the project progressing into the future. Okay, so hope we can attend some of the other sessions in the World Urban Parks World Congress, and thanks for participating in this one. Bye for now. Bye everyone.